Many of us have to be warriors and fight for truth, for justice, for the earth. You know, she's earned that. You know, even if it's all kind of fall apart for a bit, that doesn't mean we sit back and do nothing. We have to also kind of engage that warrior spirit, stand up for what's right. What is the most I can do for the whole during this lifetime? You have to just keep asking yourself that question and then live the answer.
Welcome to this week's Timeless edition. We know that our epics are vast and deep, and that we are in this time of the age of information and attention. Each podcast episode is filled with so much wisdom and new ways of seeing. And in this culture, there is a propensity to make more and more and more. We want to contribute to a culture of meaning, care, and presence. And we know that wisdom is timeless. So in these short episodes, we share a piece of timeless wisdom. Next week, we'll be back with a full-length, deep conversation. As always, if you find what we offer here at All That We Are supportive, please dive deeper with us. You can find out on our website how to join the Rhythm, our membership space where we meet twice a week to practice together and expand our capacity for presence, love, and intuition, all with the higher intention of collective liberation. We wish to take part and create more in-person events. If you have any ideas, please get in touch to collaborate. This week's Timeless is from our archives, part of a beautiful and powerful conversation we had in episode 115 with Richard Rudd on intuition, mystery school, and collective wisdom, entitled The Age of Synthesis. We hope that just hearing this small part will give you space to contemplate, integrate, and embody what is shared. Richard Rudd is an international spiritual teacher, writer, and award-winning poet. His mystical journey began early in life when he experienced a life-changing state of spiritual illumination over 3 days and nights in his 20s. This catalyzed an extensive worldwide spiritual search. All his studies became synthesized in 2002 when he began to write and receive The Gene Keys, a vast synthesis exploring the miraculous possibilities inherent in human DNA. It took 7 years to write the book, as well as understand and embody its teachings. Today, Richard continues to teach and travel all over the world, applying the Gene Keys across many fields, from the practical to the mystical. Attracting a wide audience, his works have been translated into many languages. Richard has been named on the Watkins list of the 100 most spiritually influential living people. Richard and the Gene Keys have just released the Codon Rings, an exploration of the code of light woven into our biology. The 64 codons are genetic sequences that encode the amino acids, which are the building blocks of proteins in our body, an extension of the Gene Keys teachings. The 22 codon rings are deep, poetic, and psychological renderings of the very source code of our existence. They are the biological machinery behind what the ancients call karma. This Timeless explores the question, how to trust the whisper of intuition. I hope that this Timeless opens something for you in the whispers of your own soul. This is an invitation to step off the map, listen more deeply, and live in conversation with the mystery. Welcome to All That We Are, with me, your host, Amisha Tala Oak. On this show, we explore the weave between activism, the sacred, creativity, and regeneration, the spaces where our inner and outer worlds dance. From healing trauma to nature connection, to new technologies, to ancient wisdom, it's time for us to move beyond silos and into an integrated way of being. Every one of us has ideas and personal experiences to share that can lead us to a more beautiful future. Despite the challenges we face as a global community or the pressures we meet in our daily lives, when we stop and dare to listen, to ask ourselves the big questions, and to share what we are already doing and envisioning. We create the futures of our wildest dreams, and we begin to embody all that we are becoming, and all that is possible.
One of my turning points was probably when I was 19 years old, and I bought one of those round the world tickets, and I set off with a group of friends, went to the Americas and then across the Pacific to Australia. After a while of being together with these friends, I kind of started to grow a bit tired of being with them, and because there was not that there was anything wrong with them, but there was a kind of trail that was laid out where travelers go. And I kind of picked up on that, and I just thought, I don't want this. You would follow the trail, and you would go to those certain places. And there were beautiful places and magical places, and you would meet the same people often further on down the road. And after a while, I just thought, I want to go off the trail. And so I just said goodbye to them, and I set off, on my own in the opposite direction. And I think that's what began my initiation. And it was, it was a little bit daunting because I hadn't ever done anything like that. I was in foreign place. I started in Australia, and then I ended up in Indonesia, and I just followed my intuition and kept going. And it was really adventurous. I felt like a kind of early adventurer where, I just followed that intuitive calling of literally getting to an airport and then looking at the board and going, well, I'm going to go there. And then finding a way to get there. And then I started to meet people, and I started to meet different people. I started to meet more local people. I started to meet kind of wilder travelers who also weren't following the kind of prescribed routes with the youth hostels and things like that. Because I'd just go off the beaten track for as far as I could. And that's where you meet really interesting people. And that's where you meet locals. I had some amazing experiences. I mean, some of the things that happened to me were extraordinary. And, ended up working on a film set on the Great Barrier Reef because of a guy I met on a beach that turned out to be a diplomat who had these connections. And anyway, my life was just sort of magical. And I realized that if you're open to things and you take the risk, then the doors open. So I think in that year or so, I kind of broke through into another realm of realizing life is magical. A little bit of courage and a little bit of stretching and a little bit of off the beaten track, it opens up so much. And then I spent a lot of my 20s also traveling the world and then coming back to the UK and then going off again and doing all kinds of things. And spirituality was part of that journey. I really encourage anyone listening to this, if you're younger and you want to open up your horizons to, do something like that, go off without a plan, go alone. You have to be alone. Obviously follow your intuition and be safe. Don't be crazy. But, you got to take some risks, and then amazing things happen.
And it doesn't even need to be going far, right? We can go on wild adventures close to wherever we are.
Absolutely. Just open to people. When you see someone coming opposite way from you, or just say hello. It's amazing like how simple that is. And maybe pause and see if, a conversation wants to develop, or a dialogue. And you'll know if it does, because it'll just happen. In a way, all human beings have that deep in their DNA, some kind of friendliness, some sense of hosting. Wherever I've gone in the world, even locally, there's always this sense that if you give people the opportunity, they'll open the doors for you. And the more we walk it, the more we trust it, the wider it gets and the clearer it becomes, the less risky, because sometimes the intuition has to take risks because it goes against logic. or reason. You're offered an opportunity, but your intuition says no. And your mind is going, no, don't be crazy. You shouldn't say no to this. But your intuition sometimes does that. It's about as much about saying no as it is about saying yes. And it's such a powerful thing to kind of know that pathway inside yourself. And the other thing, I guess, about intuition is it's sometimes very quiet. It whispers things very quietly. And sometimes it only whispers it once. And if you're not listening and paying attention, you might miss it because the mind is very noisy. And there's this little quiet whisper that just goes, go down that way. And the mind's going, no, I think you should go this way because then that will lead to that. And that will probably lead to that. And then you can have that.
And you don't want to be late and you've got to do this. And it's like all of these things.
Yeah, exactly. It's also really connects you into your body, which is the one thing that people in the modern world do less, because we have so many things, pressures and responsibilities and dreams that we're trying to attain or whatever, and sometimes struggles. For coming into your intuition, it means to be really deep in your body and into physical awareness of the body, because that intuition rises up from within the body. And so it is about being embodied, living in the moment, living in the present moment. And you can live in the present moment and still have a very active, interesting mind. You've got to have that integration and that balance of deep resting in, I call it resting in the belly. And a lot of my teaching is based on bringing one's awareness into the belly and really healing our relationship with the belly, which traditionally is where intuition kind of arises from. I think it's actually more, I think it's everywhere. But I think when you're in the belly, when you're in the core of your being, the gut, then it's also you're in every cell of the body at the same time. Because if you're in the center, then you're in the center of every cell. There's something about that intuition that we call it our gut response, or it's deep in us, in that lower dantian, as they call it, or that lower part of our being, where we have as you said, we have a very powerful developing intelligence. In a way, supersedes the brain, and the brain is incredible, but it's called the second brain or the abdominal brain. In many ways, it's the first brain, actually. The intelligence in there is extraordinary. And I would say in the process of developing or awakening, a new possibility in us. You talk about the future being beautiful. And I think a lot of it is to do with the development of that part of our being, the true stability in our being. That's where it lies. And when a person finds that inside themselves, they become like an anchor. They become like a really sort of powerful rock amidst the sea of changing frequencies of the world. It doesn't mean that you're not perfect and you don't have your kind of moments, but you always come back to this. The more you're anchored there, the more reliable you are in a way, because life can kind of work through you, can sing out through you. It can choose through you, and it can choose what it wants instead of what you think you want. And I think there's that. So it's a process of deep surrender. It's mysterious, isn't it? The surrender to the intuition, because you're surrendering to the unknown and the unknowable, and you're surrendering to the mystery of something else greater than you choosing through you. I love that. That requires a kind of real adventurer inside us to step up. I think it also unlocks our joy. There's an enormous amount of joy hidden in the human body. That's what I found in my travels. Like if you go out amongst simple folk, in the world who are living more hand to mouth sustenance, and I'm not glamorizing the poor people, poverty at all. But I found this to be true when you're around people who are living simply. They have this joy in them that comes from that simplicity, or maybe it comes from the edge that they're living on. And if you dig a bit deeper, for sure, there are concerns and there are worries and there are anxieties, just like everyone else. But there's this sort of, with simplicity comes more joy in a way. The road to simplicity is actually, it moves through complexity, for many of us, because we have to dismantle the complexity that we've created in our life through our decisions, through not making intuitive-based decisions. And that that tends to happen is that we then create a more and more complicated life around us that is more draining and more, it's like the accumulation of wealth, people that accumulate more and more wealth. And I'm not speaking out against that as well, because I don't have a judgment on those things. What it often does is it makes your life more and more complex, and it creates more and more responsibilities. It's harder to enjoy it. So you then look at someone who doesn't have very much, and they might well be a lot happier than you. But we have to learn these lessons. Many of us have to go through that process, come out the other side, and realize that.
That's part of embodiment, right? That you have to experience it in your own body. There are things that you can learn from others around you and from books, but yeah, you have to experience things. Can you tell us more about the gene keys and how that came through for you?
It's been like the assembling of a great kind of cosmic jigsaw puzzle. When I was younger, in my late 20s, I was given the first pieces of the puzzle. What do? You haven't got the other pieces, and they don't make sense. But you can see that they're like the pillars, and you can feel like, wow, this is powerful. So I had this experience that gave me a reference point for something. And then I started to live my life. I carried on living my life, and pieces came to me one by one. Other pieces came, experiences, things I learned, people I met, the things they knew, teachers, teachings. As I followed my intuition, following this spiritual path, this serpentine path, that for me led into all kinds of places, including fatherhood and marriage and responsibilities and all of that. But it also led me around the world and to lots of other, amazing experiences, and to assemble a body of teachings. And it led to kind of other things like betrayals and kind of forgivings and a lot of very human experiences that we all, one way or another, experience, deaths and births and stuff, human stuff. And I started assembling this body of teachings, this wisdom that was grown out of my experiences with studying I Ching and the things from all the many mystical systems I'd explored and deep contemplations. And then it started to form this thing. And I started to write this book, The Gene Keys, which was a deep contemplation of the pieces of the puzzle, in a way, the 64 pieces. And then out of that, after I'd written that book and it found a publisher for itself, it kind of started. And it was like your first question you asked, like what opening up to letting other people into your inner world was quite a moment. What will people think of this? Will it have a resonance? Does it have, I had the sense, having written the book, because that was the foundational piece, which was like a big centerpiece of the puzzle, if you like. I kind of had the sense that this was a powerful body of work. Well, it was a bit more than a sense, I knew it. And I kind of had the feeling this was going to have its own life, but I had no idea what that would be. And as I said, some of them are people. Some of those people allow the teachings to come together in specific ways, so that 3 or 4 different things that really fit and then can be shared. So it's not a one-person puzzle. It's a collective puzzle. I call it a synarchy. The synarchy is a wonderful Gene Keys word. There are lots of Gene Keys words that don't have ordinary meanings, so you can kind of really contemplate them. Synarchy is the self-organizing capacity of a group of people to come together, and they come together with a synthesis. And the synthesis is the teaching. The teaching requires many views and many different experiences and people to bring it together. So the synarchy and the synthesis kind of live together, and there's a great mystery in the unraveling of a collective wisdom like this. So it's been very mysterious, and it continues. And I'm still putting together pieces of the puzzle every day, working on several pieces at once, as you often do, because you're kind of working through the areas, and you have unfinished pieces over there, and then you have pieces where you've finished, but then how do you fit that? And it's a labyrinthine wisdom, but it's a joy. I guess the Gene Keys is like a mystery school. And we don't really have mystery schools so much these days, but a mystery school is something it's like a university, but a university of higher consciousness. And so you come in to the university or the mystery school, and then you find your way through the labyrinth, whichever way you want to go. And so you explore this teaching and then that teaching, and then you move on to another level and another level. And you're inside this body of wisdom that's reflecting your own wisdom back to you through the process. And along the way, you're probably meeting other people who are doing similar pathways, and you're crossing destinies and sharing the teachings and how they're affecting you. And I've set it up in a very different way from other teachings that I've been involved in, because it's self-teaching. It's self-illumination. I call it the journey of self-illumination, because it opens up from inside you. And the external teachings are just a sort of scaffolding that allow this inner building, this inner thing to take place. So you follow your intuition through the teachings and the synthesis. So people come in with a lot of questions. There's a lot of beginners, and they have all these questions about the Gene Keys and how it works and all of that. And after a while, all those questions kind of just dissipate, because you realize they're not the point, because the answers come from inside you. And those sort of technical questions are not what it's about, because it's a magical system in that way. And once the awakening process starts to occur inside you, you realize it's more of a game. So in a way, what we're doing more and more now is gamifying it so that it is more responsive. We're using internet tools and things to make it more playful, so that you can find your own way and to allow the teachings to just have their game and their way inside you. In a way, it's more about, it's more about meeting people than anything else. If you meet people on the same wavelength as you, those friendships that develop can be magical. And then you have something in common. So in a way, the synthesis, the teaching is just an excuse to experience love and connection and adventure. Of course, not everyone uses it that way, and some people just are very solo, and that's also wonderful, because they need that for themselves, for self-empowerment. So the more elements there are to the synthesis, and the more we gamify it, the more obvious that truth is. Life itself is a game. Even though there's intense suffering, that knowing underneath that we're eternal means that we can approach life in a completely different way. And that's really the essence of the teaching. It's never about the teaching itself. It's about that truth, those immortal truths of love and physical embodiment and presence. We need to apply the kind of wild spiritual teachings to everyday life, to know how to grow a business and grow the family of people in a business. Listen to them all. It's like a bigger family. Listen to them, learn from them, include everything, like try and bring those teachings to earth in a kind of environment where that's not really been used to having those kind of values. Yeah, it's an edge. Relationships is an edge. Business and money is an edge for spirituality. Sexuality is an edge. There are lots of edges in all kinds of areas. It's a very rich time in that sense. We've got to bring this spiritual teaching down into the form. And we've got to bring it into the earth, into the way we treat each other and the earth itself, and into our communities. I have a strong intuition, and it also is embedded in the Gene Keys teachings, because there's a prophecy that kind of like runs like this seam through the middle of Gene Keys, that we're coming into a time of massive transition of our whole planet and the species itself. So I believe that the Gene Keys and my teachings and my work is part of that preparation, and that many others are receiving also part of their preparation of the bigger jigsaw puzzle, so that we can imbue that new awareness into our children, into the future generations, so that they have this solidity, so that they can pass that on to their children. And then collectively, these future generations can handle potential chaos that might be coming to the planet. So we're not alone in this shift. It's connected from the lowest life forms to the higher dimensional life forms we can't even perceive yet. Everything is involved in it. And it's a kind of reaching a choke point. So it's an incredible time to be alive. I can see why people would be afraid, and that fear is understandable. And yet it's also a time of extraordinary possibility. Many of us have to be warriors and fight for truth, for justice, for the earth. She's earned that. Even if it's all kind of gonna fall apart for a bit, that doesn't mean we sit back and do nothing. We have to also kind of engage that warrior spirit, stand up for what's right. I'll finish with the one question that I always ask everyone in my retreats, which is, ask yourself this question: what is the very highest purpose? What is the most I can do for the whole during this lifetime? You have to just keep asking yourself that question and then live the answer.
Thank you for listening. We hope that you have enjoyed this episode and it has sparked some inspiration and creativity in you. This is one of our timeless editions, a short and powerful piece of wisdom for you to contemplate, integrate, and embody. We have an archive of over 200 epics, long, deep conversations for you to explore, share, and enjoy. We keep this podcast advertising free, as we don't want to sell you things that you don't need. This is made possible by you supporting our work as a member of Presence Collective, a patron, or through joining our offerings. You can also support us by sharing this with those that you love. Can you send it to 10 people who you know will find it powerful? This podcast is made by an all-female global team. You can explore our world at allthatweare.org and find your ways to take part. All That We Are celebrates all that we are already and the untapped potential that lives inside us. We exist to offer a space of sanctuary in the ever-increasing chaos, a place where you can come and be in good company, a place where you can learn, unlearn, and connect to your own wisdom. And know that in each and every moment, all that we are is here.